Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure, is brought to you by TKM Incorporated. This company, located in Moss, Tennessee, specializes in erosion control, hydroseeding, hydromulch, silt fence. They do minor excavation work, and they also provide traffic control and construction signs. Their mission is keeping people safe. Their passion is wishing that all men could be saved. TKM stands for The King's Men. If you'd like to contact The King's Men, you can contact them at 931-243-3958, 931-243-3958, or you may email them at tkminc2001@twlakes.net. That is tkminc2001@twlakes.net. The King's Men, in partnership with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. SJ&L General Contractor is a full construction company that primarily focuses on civil construction and asphalt sales in the Huntsville and Fayetteville regions. Services they provide include, but are not limited to, road construction, asphalt material, underground utilities, site work, and demolition. They employ heavy equipment operators, concrete finishers, pipe layers, and CDL dump truck drivers. If you would like for this company to work for you on your project, or if you'd like to work for them as an employee of this family-owned business, you can contact them at 931-433-4660. That is 931-433-4660, or 3W's and a dot, sjnl.com. That's www.sjnl.com. SJ&L General Contractor is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. It was not a very flattering picture. In fact, it was downright unflattering. It's this close-up in bad light of the former Queen of England, and the caption on the picture says, "Happy Treason Day, ungrateful colonials." Now, my response to that is, it's not really treason if you won the war. Now, why am I looking at this picture and having this conversation? Well, a little backstory. My wife enjoys technology. My wife likes anything that's innovative. She's the one who insisted, hey, we need a computer. She's the one that insisted, hey, we need to be on this thing called the internet. She's the one who said, hey, we need cell phones. We need to get rid of our landline. She pushed us toward getting rid of cable and just, streaming. She's the reason we've had Palm Pilots and cell phones and flip cameras. She's the first one in our family to totally get rid of a laptop and just have an iPad. And of course, she drives a hybrid, because a hybrid is just a big fancy gadget. And, she explains to me, you don't understand, it's not just electric and it's not just a gas engine. It's a gasoline combustion engine and an electric car. I don't have to charge it, but it runs on a battery. When you drive it, it charges the battery, and you can pull up to a stop sign or a stoplight. And when you put your foot on the brake, the gasoline engine goes to sleep and the electric part of the engine still runs. Isn't that amazing? I said, honey, my mouth and my brain have had that relationship all my life. My brain will go to sleep and my mouth will continue to run. And it's just that reason that I'm standing in the lobby of the bank looking at a picture of the Queen of England. You see, I walk into the bank after the 4th of July. It's been a long weekend, and I've had some checks pile up, and I've got to come in and make a deposit. And me making a deposit at the bank is not a simple thing. It's a complicated thing. I've got 3 different accounts, and you show me a guy with 3 different accounts, and I'll show you a guy with an attorney and an accountant. And so I'm trying to figure out what goes in personal account, what goes in the LLC, and does this have to be with the DBA, or is this for the savings account? And I'm trying to do the math in my head, because I'm trying to preserve my cognitive function. And so I'm a little bit distracted, and the ladies at the bank are always nice. They're always pleasant. And one of the ladies gives me a greeting, and I'm trying to sort all these numbers out, and my brain was in neutral and my mouth was in gear. And I said, well, did you do anything special for the 4th? To which she replied, well, that's not really a thing for me. And she replied in a little better accent than that. And it's the British lady that works at the bank. It's the English lady, the same lady that said, "Why, Mr. Jones, you're looking rather bionic today." It's this little lady from London, and she's standing behind the bank counter, and I've just asked her, "Well, did you celebrate the fact that our country kicked your country's butt and declared our independence and started a war over the thing, and we won the war?" And she very politely and in a funny way explained to me, "Well, that's not really a thing for me." And then she had me look at the meme on her phone, which was the Queen of England calling me a traitor and an ungrateful colonial. And as funny as it was, and as good a time as we had with that, it got me to thinking that it doesn't really care what you believe about it. You can't undo the fact that it's a thing. See, it doesn't matter if it's not a thing for you, it's actually a thing. Over 200 years ago, our country declared independence and went to war with the most powerful military in the world, and we won, and we established ourselves as a sovereign entity. You know, I've actually used the phrase, perception equals reality. And that's not actually true. Now, in the sense that we use the term perception equals reality, it's what a person believes or doesn't believe affects the way they live. It affects the way they respond. It affects the way they cope. It affects the way that they make adjustments because it becomes their reality, but it's not actually reality. Perception doesn't equal reality. And you take any controversial thing you want to talk about. You take UFOs, Bigfoot, climate change, global warming, man-made climate change, COVID mask or COVID, creation versus evolution. It doesn't matter what you believe about those things. Those things are either true or they're not true. And your belief about them doesn't make them more true or less true. Your belief doesn't have any effect on it. If you believe something is true and it's not, it doesn't matter. If you don't believe in something and it's true, it doesn't matter. Because our perception really doesn't equal reality, and our response to things doesn't change the reality of the thing. It may change it for us. And so when you start talking about a belief in God, your belief in God doesn't make God any more real. And a person's disbelief in God doesn't reduce God in any capacity whatsoever. The reality of the existence of God is not shaped or affected in any way, shape, or form by what you believe about him. And I happen to be unapologetically a believer in God. And as a believer in God, I want to tell you something about perception. There's nothing you can do to make God love you more. And there's nothing you can do to make God love you less. God's love for humans is a constant, a known constant in the universe, if you'll let me use some quasi-scientific language to talk about faith. You see, God's on record that he loves us. And our belief in him and our behavior toward him doesn't affect his love for us. There's nothing you can do to make God love you more, and there's nothing you can do to make God love you less. God doesn't love you more if you go to church, and God doesn't love you less if you don't. God doesn't love you more if you're heterosexual, and God doesn't love you less if you're homosexual. God doesn't love you more if you're squared away and your identity about your gender lines up with your genitalia. And God doesn't love you less if you're confused about that. But our response to God doesn't cause him to love us more or love us less, but our response to God, our compliance with morals, our obedience to his teaching, our living up to the standards that he's put out for us, those things don't affect whether he loves us more or loves us less, but they are indicative of whether or not we love him back. You see, everything God's ever asked us to do, everything God has prescribed that we should do is good for us spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, and physically. And every prohibition God's ever given us, everything God's ever told us not to do is bad for us physically, emotionally, psychologically, or spiritually. Now, our belief in it or our disbelief in it doesn't affect the truth of it. If God says this is the way it should be done, it's the way it should be done. If God says this is the way it shouldn't be done, it's not the way it should be done. And it doesn't make that either true or not true. It just, our belief in it affects the way we live. And the way we live is indicative of whether or not we reciprocate God's love for us. We don't earn God's love. God's love is given. There's nothing you can do to make God love you more. And there's nothing you can do to make God love you less. But your behavior is an indicator of whether or not you reciprocate the love that God has for us. Being a person of faith is not really about believing in God, because your belief in God doesn't make him more real or less real. Your belief in God doesn't make him more powerful, and your disbelief in God doesn't diminish him in any capacity. Your belief in God, it's not really I believe in God. Faith is probably more accurate to describe as I believe God. So that when God says this is the way I should act as a human, this is the way I should act as a neighbor, this is the way I should act as a husband, this is the way I should act as a father, this is the way I should act as a spouse, this is the way I should act as a parent. If I believe that God knows what he's talking about, then it affects the way I live. Now, my perception of whether God exists or doesn't exist doesn't affect whether God exists or not. Perception doesn't equal reality, but perception, believing God, affects how I treat my enemies, how I treat my neighbor, how I treat my spouse, how I treat my parents, how I treat anybody. And my response to my belief in God affects the way I live, the way I talk, and the way I treat people. I don't try to be confronted very often about my faith. I try to be unapologetically Christian, and I try to be humble in my Christianity. And my belief in God doesn't make God more powerful or less powerful, but it is my belief. And because I believe God, I make choices about some of the things I do and don't do in some of the ways that I live. I believe that the eternal spirit, the creator of the universe, became flesh, became a human in the form of Jesus, the Christ. And Christ is a Greek word that means anointed, the same as the Hebrew word means Messiah. And I believe he came and he lived on the earth. And I believe he taught, and I believe he did miracles. And I believe that the Sanhedrin court and the scribes and the Pharisees manipulated a Roman governor named Pontius Pilate. And although they wanted him executed for blasphemy, they convinced Pilate that he claimed to be a king, and they got him convicted of sedition. And the Roman governor gave the order that this man be crucified, be nailed to a cross, and die of asphyxiation by hanging on a cross for 6 hours on a Friday. And then I believe that 3 days later, he arose from that tomb and subsequently ascended back to heaven. And my belief in that affects the way I live. It affects the way I talk. It affects the way I think. It affects the way I treat Jackie. It affects the way I treat my neighbors. It affects what I try to do in the community. And it doesn't mean that God loves me more than he loves you because I respond to him that way. God loves you as much as he loves me. And there's nothing you can do to make God love you more, and there's nothing you can do to make God love you less. And you don't have to believe in the death, and you don't have to believe in the burial, and you don't have to believe in the resurrection, and you don't have to believe in the return. But just because it's not your thing doesn't mean it didn't happen. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707, 615-371-8707, or you can go to 3Ws and a dot, worldchristian.org, find the Donate Here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure, is sponsored by us. What? We sponsor ourselves? Is that even legal? Check us out on Amazon. You can have access to the titles of Pedagogue, the youth ministry book by Lonnie Jones; Cognitive Spiritual Development, a Christ-centered approach to spiritual self-esteem; Grappling with Life, Controlling Your Inside Space, a small essay using the principles of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to talk about psychological and emotional self-defense; If I Were a Mouse, a children's book written and illustrated by Lonnie Jones; and then The Selfish Reel, a very short story about a decision. Also, you can check out our YouTube channel to see archived lessons and presentations from across the country, some videos with rope tricks and knots. Don't forget to visit the Facebook page 550 Guys to learn about the little rope men that we make and that we invented and that we make. And then be sure to click like, subscribe, and share. This is Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.